Saw it live here on Channel 4. Jags owner Shad Khan giving fans an update on the state of the franchise, including where the team sits on the eve of free agency. And for the first time, Tom Coughlin is part of the deal. Sports director Sam Kavoris was there. Sam, how is the team's future looking?
I think it's interesting. The state of the franchise today, which is the fifth one of these presentations that they made, in essence said that the state of the franchise is good but could be better. It started with Shad Khan renewing his commitment to Jacksonville and thanking fans for their perseverance, and said he was, as they are, not happy with the results on the field and had much higher expectations going forward with Tom Coughlin now at the helm of the entire football operation. He then introduced Coughlin, who is now the executive vice president of football operations, who gave kind of a pep talk, kind of one of those speeches that you would expect to hear in the locker room as well, talking about the pride of the Jaguars organization and how important that is. And Tom Coughlin instituted this with the Giants and talked a lot about how an organization that's successful has to have an intense affection for one another. They have to understand that the person to their right and to their left is as important as they are in the success of any organization. It's a lot of the talking points that Tom Coughlin has used to build teams in the past, and his leadership style certainly includes that. So it's a big part of what the Jaguar kind of feel is these days, is a Tom Coughlin vibe when you walk into the stadium. No more short pants, no more hats. People are on time. As I've said many times, people are sitting up a little bit straighter. And then a bulk of the entire presentation of the hour and 10 minutes was taken by the president of the business side, and that's Mark Lamping, who has talked about a lot of the different changes that have been made here at the stadium. And I think one thing that surprised a lot of people is how many new stadiums have been built in the National Football League since the Jaguars became a franchise in 1995, and how many are in the works. All but two, this one and the one in Buffalo, are either in the plans to be rebuilt or have moved into a new stadium. So 30 teams have been able to increase their revenues. And Lamping spent an awful lot of time talking about how the Jaguars had lagged behind in terms of ticket sale revenue and increasing their ticket sales, and behind inflation, which pretty clearly was a signal to season ticket holders that a ticket price raise is going to be coming sometime in the near future. He also talked a lot about London and the importance of London, even though the percentage of revenue for the Jaguars from London is down a bit. He attributed that to the exchange rate with the pound. He did say that it remains a very important part, and showed that the league has gone from 1 to now 4 games in London this year, of which the Jaguars will be a part of at least through 2020. And he finished the presentation with kind of a brand new look at the Shipyards project that the Jaguars would like to be involved in. Today was the day that Shipyards presentations had to be given to the city. Lamping said that the Jaguars presented theirs, and it's a little bit different because of the EPA concerns at the old Shipyards property. Instead of building there, the Jaguars want to build east of there and then use that Shipyards property on the surface rather than going below, because that mitigates some of the EPA problems. It would be a park that would basically be dedicated to veterans. The one big thing that we've heard recently in the last few months is that overpass that comes off the Hart Bridge, much of that would be gone, but parts of it would be turned into a Jacksonville version of the High Line into New York, if you're familiar with that. So a lot of giant plans that the Jaguars have, all starting with Memorial Day weekend as Daly's Place opens in the South End Zone. We're live at the stadium.